Let's call this meeting to order. Call the roll, please.
Kinsey,
Here.
Logston,
Here.
Mossberg,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Turner.
Here.
We have a quorum, so the next item will be recognition of visitors. We've got Joe Don, we've got April.
Toby Baker with CEC.
Okay.
Craig Boyer with CEC.
Okay. And then we've got Marion from the newspaper. Then we'll go on to the next item. Consideration and action to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on February 11th, 2019.
I'll just point out, there's corrected minutes in front of you, but they need slight correction as well. What was emailed out had Caleb and I both present, as well as absent. And so the final corrected minutes should have that we were both absent and not present.
I'd move for approval. As amended?
Yeah.
As amended. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Turner,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Mossberg,
Yes.
Logston,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
And we can go on to the next item, number 5, which would be reports, city council reports first.
I'll hit a couple items. One, and it's not really a city council event, but the citizens of Alva last month when the board was meeting were, treated to the airport property at Bob Baker's hangar for the Chamber of Commerce gala. It was we got a lot of people out here that night, and I think it was left a good taste in a lot of people's mouth. And so I'm grateful Bob offered up his hangar for the event, and it turned out, wonderfully. Sorry I missed the meeting. They double booked me, but sound like you guys got by just fine. Couple things coming up. The board retreat, or the budget retreat for the city is coming up on March 30th, and we'll be at the VOTEC all morning and probably part of the afternoon. If any of y'all would like to attend, you're certainly welcome to, and just let probably Angelica or Joe Don know. That way we can be prepared to, post quorums or agendas and whatnot for this board if we need to. We won't be approving any budget items at that. We'll just be, trying to get everything lined out so that when we do put the budget together, we're prepared. We're working on wrapping up some recommendations for some economic development initiatives. One of them is for anybody in a commercially zoned district. We'll be offering a matching grant program for those business owners that they'll be able to use for facade improvements, which may include windows, doors, showroom, expenditures, signage, there's some parking lot stuff. All of that are the things that are up for discussion that are ultimately going to be refined and sent to City Council for approval, but we're looking to hopefully sometime this spring be able to announce that grant opportunity for local area businesses, or local businesses. Then we'll also be working to put together a framework for some other initiatives in what I'm calling, and I'm not sure if it'll maintain this name through the process, but an All About Alva campaign, which the way we're talking about it, it would be something of a promotional program that incorporates all local business, and kind of the purpose would be to further do what we can to incentivize and encourage shopping local. As I think everybody here is well aware, city operates on the sales tax and whatever it gets from utility revenue. Utility revenue is basically there to cover, utilities. But fire, police, ambulance, streets, a lot of the stuff that goes on at The city is all dependent upon sales tax, so we're wanting to do what we can to help support local businesses to generate more of that. So, and of course, if it's generating more sales tax, it's good for business owners because they're generating more revenues for themselves. Those are some of the things we're working on right now. We're probably within the next week or two going to wrap up the HVAC project at City Hall. City Council meetings should return to City Hall this month, so next week we'll be in council chambers. But the offices won't move until the first week of April. And they'll continue to be at the professional building until that time. We're monitoring quite a bit of legislation at the state level. Nothing has really, that I could tell, nothing seems to have would have any major impact on the airport specific, but there are some things that would have impact on the community that we're monitoring right now. And I think, Joe Don, unless there's anything you'd like to add, that's
I think you pretty well covered it all on that.
okay. I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
No questions? If not, we'll move on to the manager's report. Mike?
Okay, first thing we'll talk about is fuel report. It was a pretty slow month out here. Had a lot of bad weather last month, a lot of foggy days, snow days, ice. As you can see, total gallons we sold on 100 low lead was only 931.8 for a total value of 33.36. Sold 254 gallons of avgas off of the truck for a total of $1,013.46. So the total 100 low lead sold last month was a little over 1,100 gallons, almost 12, 1,185.8 for a total of 4,546.82. Sold 867 gallons of Jet A over wing and 391 gallons of Jet A single point. Had 8 gallons that we use for our own space heater for a total of 1,266 gallons. So we sold a total of 1,258 at $4,214.30. Total fuel sales last month was $8,761.12. We had $80 an overnight hangar rental. We had gentleman had 4 nights at $15. Had another gentleman that spent 1 night at $15, and then he threw in an extra $5 or total sales. Didn't have any oil sales last month. Like I said, it was just a bad month for flying with all the weather and stuff, but our total sales last month, 8,841.12. So hopefully that starts changing soon, so maybe we won't have quite as much bad weather as we did. Second thing, I left y'all a copy. Garber got back with Joe Don and myself last week. We have an airport master record, looks like this. That's on our weight limits. We got the weight limits worked out. They're going to be published. One first thing Garver told me was, if you notice up in the upper left-hand corner, it says has Greg Murray listed as the manager. I told them, I provided them with a copy, and that's the second copy I gave to you guys. It looks like this. This was an airport data change that I had already sent in to the FAA before Garber ever got here. That's going to get Greg off and get me on. That won't be published. I mean, it's in effect, but it's not published until 4/25, April 25th of 2019. And I think as far as this airport master record that they gave to Joe Don and me, I'm guessing that it's probably got a will have a published date probably too. They didn't say when it would be published, but you can see on the back, it shows the configurations for the single wheel and for the dual wheel. Our runway weight limit out there on 1836 is 29,000 for single, 38,000 for dual, and then our taxiways are 50,000. So I figured it'd be a lot more than that since it's a new runway, but that's what they came up with. So, and they said they're going to get all of this sent off to the FAA, so it'll be published on like AirNav and stuff. We'll have our weight limits on it listed on the runway. So, any questions about that? So, like I said, we were the only regional airport that didn't have it listed, so it might take a month or two to get it published, but AirNav pulls about all their stuff from the FAA website. So, the third thing I would like to talk about is I had a Hoydale out last week in reference to the OCC violations. It came out, I believe it was last Thursday or Friday. They got everything done. We had 7 violations. They got everything done except for the overflow valve testing on the Jet A tank. To test the overflow valves on the tanks, they have to take they call it the drop tube, and I think the drop tube is where when the trucks come in here, they actually take their hose and hook up to that drop tube. These drop tubes have never been out, so of course they can't get this one out. They can, but when they do it, they're going to tear it up. So he said we won't even test the drop valve in it until we get a new valve ordered. Then we'll come back, we'll get the old one taken out, retest that drop valve, and then we'll have right now we've got 6 out of the 7 violations corrected. Once they get this part ordered, the drop valve can test that and replace the sensor in the west spill bucket. That sensor should have been shutting off the pump out there when that spill bucket got full of water, and I'm guessing just due to all the heavy rains that we had last summer. So we'll get that sensor ordered and that drop tube, and they'll come back and finish it up, and then we'll be good to go with the OCC on everything. So I know this is going to be talked about a little bit in detail later. We were talking last time about the spending limit maintenance versus outright purchases. This Hoydale first estimate or quote was $3,392.70 for that, but now we're going to have to get a new drop tube and a new sensor, so we know that it's going to be over that. Do pre-testing services. When our cathodic protection went down last October, we spent over $2,000, almost $2,100 for them to come out and fix it. And then they had to come back last month and check the work that they fixed. That was another $1,250. To get the reels lights up and running is going to be over $3,000. We got the quote on that, which we all know about. So that's just where I was trying to kind of, hopefully we can differentiate between repair work like that has to be done in a prompt manner versus just outright spending, And like I said, I'm not going to do anything without letting somebody on the board, and Joe don't know anyway, but some of this stuff, $1,000 just isn't going to get you anywhere with a lot of this stuff that goes on out here, so. About 2 weeks ago, Joe Don forwarded me an email from a place called Airfield Surplus. So I emailed them back, and a gentleman by the name of Bob Hoffman called me, and we talked on the phone. Well, I told him about the stuff we have down here in the round top, the old Pappy lights, old globes, just different things that we had that they've taken out from, when we upgraded from 1735 to 1836. He wants me to try to get some pictures of all the stuff that we're gonna keep some of it in reserve for ourselves, but like the old Pappy lights, he says, stuff like that, he's pretty sure he can find buyers for. He said there's always somebody in a smaller airport here in the US, and he said he's even got customers overseas that might be interested in some of this stuff, so instead of just hauling it off to the scrap iron pile when I get some part-time help, that's one thing I want to do down there is go through that stuff and see what maybe we could put out, you know, to try to sell and get some money out of, and keep the other stuff in reserve, like some of the globes and stuff that we might need. But it might be a way, you know, to come up with a little extra money instead of just, you know, getting a dumpster and throwing it off. So he said if I can get him some pictures of that stuff that, you know, he said if I can't sell it, he said I might even be willing to buy it myself, you know, in a lump and keep it in my own inventory. So I'm going to try to work on that when I get some help out here and get through that stuff down there. I issued a couple of NOTAMs last month. We had the snowstorm, which wasn't much, but it was about 5 or 6 inches. I started out with a work in progress and found out that the tractor and the dozer blade weren't real conducive for pushing snow, so I went ahead and shut the airport down until Public Works came out with their snow plow and got the runway opened up for me. So anyway, I went and talked to Benny the next day and thanked him for sending a couple of guys out to help me. And Benny and I kind of worked out a deal. I told him, you know, man, we've got to get the runway opened up as quick as we can because we have air ambulances come in here quite often, and we had one come in that very night. So Benny said he would try, you know, kind of put that on the priority list, you know, to get out here and help, because like I said, the tractor and the dozer blade, you just can't really, it's fine for clearing off the ramp, but trying to clear 5,000 foot of runway with that's just too time consuming. So then I got a call last week. Well, actually I called Libra first in reference to the reel lights, trying to get them fixed. He said the circuit boards and the parts needed have been ordered, but they're slow about wanting to get them shipped. They didn't want to try to ship them till the end of this month, so he's going to try to get with his supplier and see if he can get that shipping moved up a little bit so he can get out here and get that work completed. So. And then I've noticed since I've been here, the security light here at the south door never has worked. I went down to Northwest Electric, bought a bulb because the filament was burned out in it. It's a metal hay bulb. Spent $22 on it, put it in, didn't work. So they think probably the ballast is out in it. So I called Northwest Electric, and Todd Holder brought up that he knows the sign out here, the fluorescent lights on it weren't working. They were on, but you can tell that they needed replaced. So Northwest suggested to go to LEDs out here for the sign. They said they could just change the ballast over, and he said you'll spend as much money fighting with the ballast and the old fluorescent bulb. So they went ahead, and I said, well, let's go ahead and get it done. And he said it'd be about $300 to try to get the security light at the south door fixed and get our lights changed over out there to LEDs. So he went ahead and sent somebody out today, and they already switched out the ballast out here and put 4 new LED bulbs in on the sign. So they have to come out and look at this security light and see if they can put a new ballast in it, or they might even have to change it to LED. He said you just have to order parts for it, come out and look, and then see what it needs. But Angelica came out last week. I appreciate Angelica helping me on the computer. Thanks, Angelica. She helped me start a spreadsheet for the cathodic protection, for all the testing that needs to be done on the field farm, because some of it's 1-year testing, some of it's 3-year testing. If you have repairs in those time frames, then your 3 years starts over. So I started a spreadsheet to help with fire extinguisher inspections, fuel farm inspections, fuel truck inspections. So I was glad to get started on that. And then I did have one part-timer. He applied, had a gentleman come out, a college kid, he came out, wanted to know what the airport job entailed, so I took him around and showed him what we do, and he seemed like he would be, work out real good. He seemed like he'd be easy to train. He was very well-spoken, knows what he wants in life, and he needs a part-time job, so I told him to go down and apply, and I think Joe Don was going to get with him today and see maybe have an interview with him, but that's about all I have for my report. So, any questions?
No questions, Greg?
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We'll go on to the next item. Item 6, presentation of upcoming Alva fly-in in April. Something?
Well, we went ahead and decided to do it on the last week of September, which is the 28th, 27th, 28th, and 29th. The 29th on Sunday would probably be the best day for the guys from Oklahoma City to bring in for the Young Eagles, because they don't like to do any of that stuff while there's other planes here. Since we don't have the fly-in, or the races coming through, we kind of talked about changing it up a little bit and doing the games with the pilots and stuff like that. So more of a down-home fly-in. We've had a lot of people that have asked, a lot of people in town that have asked if we were going to go ahead and do it again. So that's kind of where we're sitting at right now.
27th, 8th, and 9th of September.
Okay. Item 7, discussion and action regarding Alva fly-in. Any discussion, questions, any action we need to take? I noticed we had encumbered insurance again. Are we going to have any air show flyers?
I don't think so this year. We kind of talked about just changing it up a little bit, where we have more of just the pilots flying in and having a good time. That's like last year Bob couldn't fly because we didn't get him on the FAA stuff. You know, Kyle, what was Kyle's last name?
Franklin?
Franklin, sorry, had talked about coming in just to come hang out. Like I said, we had talked mainly about maybe just doing the games, the balloon drops and the flower drops, and they all like the scavenger hunt. So we'd like to go ahead and do that again. Paul did a real good job at those places, getting all that signed up. But that's kind of what we had talked about this year, instead of bringing in a bunch of the one stunt pilot, you know. So
just making it a fly-in this
just
year.
making it a fly-in, you know, and just food and
Instead of an air
airplanes.
show and fly-in, just,
Yeah. So it kind of breaks it up a little bit.
Okay.
So
And so we have money encumbered for insurance. Do you think our insurance requirements are going to be the same since there's not a stunt pilot flying?
I would just have to get with, I'd just have to get with our insurance carrier to see.
Okay.
and last year the insurance was all carried by us,
Yeah. I think
and our insurance will carry it all.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just noticed we had some encumbered on the budget.
We
the airport,
kind of didn't know how it was all going to go down last year, and then what was it, 2-3 weeks beforehand we were
Yeah.
scamping to get it all done.
And the insurance that we have encumbered right now is basically our property.
Our
We pay
property, okay.
We pay that quarterly, so there's still another
Okay.
quarter or so left to be paid.
Okay.
But yeah, our plain plastics insurance covers what's going on.
Okay.
That's head sponsor.
Yeah, I can't remember what all we did. I think we, definitely were behind it, but
Yeah.
financially, whatever we did last year, I'd say we do it again.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna go to the banquet again, and we'll go to the tourism committee again. Still have almost $6,000 left over from last year. So it's good enough to give us a good start anyhow. I've already talked to Brian Miller, so they're all on board. They said everything went good enough last year, so we'll go ahead and do our meetings like the month before with all the layout of where they need to be and what needs to be done. I talked to Ben with the police department, and they're all on board, so they've all been contacted. So,
Are you gonna have planning meetings for this, though?
Yeah.
I mean, over the next few months?
Yeah.
Like what all you wanna do besides the flower drop? and-
Yep, I think that's probably the best thing, and starting getting some, here in the next probably 6-8 weeks, start getting some flyers out so we can get those out. Maybe if you don't care, set up some here, and that way they can take them back to their airports. So, that way it's kind of publicized a little bit better this year than it was last year.
Sounds good.
Any other discussion? We don't need to take any action right now, so we'll go on to the next item.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 8, discussion and action to retain CEC as airport consultant for the next 5 years.
I will yield the floor to either Kelly or Paul as the airport representatives for that meet, for the selection committee. And then where they can't or may not want to fill in, I'll try to. And if I can't answer it, we've got CEC here to answer the questions.
Well, I'll start by saying we did have 6 RFQs to look at, and we had some pretty objective criteria to go through and how we, ranked and considered, the different companies. But ultimately, when it got down to it, we felt like the CEC was, with their Oklahoma operations and who we know at the airports where they currently operate, I got good recommendations from other people, and their qualifications are certainly there. Paul?
I had checked at 3 or 4 airports that they've worked at, we got good reports back. And, when you open up their document, and their first statement says, "Our firm gets stuff built right." That kind of stands out to you right off the bat, but I think the committee, the 3 of us, Joe, Don, Kelly, and I, we each kind of came to the same conclusion independently while we were talking about it, and felt that this was maybe the direction we needed to go, pending a couple of questions that we had that Joe Don was going to visit with them about. Pretty well. We met about 2 hours, so it wasn't a quick meeting. Last stuff in the meeting. Did your impressions of the airport as it stands now?
Obviously, you guys have done a lot in recent years, and especially I know we were up here several years back when you just constructed 1836. There's been a lot that's changed even since then. Some of the things that we saw were some pavement maintenance that probably we want to get on sooner rather than later, just to keep it from deteriorating. But overall, you guys are in great shape. We've worked with a lot of other airports that needed a lot more things in a bigger hurry. And obviously, you guys kind of stayed on top of a lot of it.
I noticed in the back of your book, you had outlined some of the things that you thought would need our attention. I noticed most of it was taxiway, sealing things in the main runway.
There's a curve that we use in engineering that looks at the life cycle of pavement and the cost to address issues with that pavement. And if you continue to rehab the pavement, you kind of stay up at the top of the curve. If you get to the point where you have to start doing patching, or even then reconstruction, it gets exponentially more expensive. And so that's something that, if we have cracks that are open, there's no longer sealant, bonded between both sides of the cracks, and we've got water infiltrating down into the base. And that is going to expedite the failure of that pavement. And so if we can stay on top of that, keep those cracks sealed, that keeps the water from getting into the base, and then, as asphalt ages, it oxidizes and it loses the oil out of the top of that asphalt, which will, again, cause it to deteriorate faster. So one of the other things that we typically try to do on asphalt pavement every 5 to 7 years is to put down a seal coat. And that seal coat will keep water from penetrating the surface of the asphalt, and that'll cause it to deteriorate as it freezes and thaws. So you can spend a little bit of money now to maintain the pavement, or you can spend a lot in a decade or in 15 years to have to reconstruct and patch. So that's why we try to focus on that. And, typically, the FAA, as far as their priorities, they start at the runway center line and work their way out. And the closer to the runway center line a project is, the higher a priority it is to the FAA. So by the time we get out to fencing or vehicle parking lot or something like that, that's a lot further down on their list than your runway or your parallel taxiway or something like that.
And so, I don't, how far, are we about as far out as you guys work now in Oklahoma, as far northwest?
No, we work in Hooker.
Okay. Well, that's right.
Yeah, we work in Hooker, we work in Altus, Bartlesville,
Okay.
Eufaula.
But one of the problems that we have out here is getting people, suppliers, whether it be concrete, asphalt, whatever,
Sure.
some certain services to come in.
Sure.
And it seemed like with your locations and the places that you work, apparently you would have resources to be able to pull in to
So
handle projects.
we did a concrete terminal apron in Hooker 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. And we actually talked to a paving contractor in Broken Arrow that had done 6 or 7 projects for us. They'd done a couple up at Enid, done an excellent job. And we said, hey, would you go look at this project? And they ended up winning the bid. They went from Broken Arrow to Hooker because we asked them to, and they won the project.
That's a fair amount, right?
Well, yeah.
Right.
But one of the other things that we try to do as well is a lot of contractors don't like the FAA specifications. And I'll be the first to admit they are written fairly punitively on the contractor. In the current AIP bill that's been out for a little over 6 months, there's new language in there that raised the operating weight limit of the airports that can use state specifications, so like ODOT specifications. Before, if you had aircraft that were greater than 12,500 pounds, you could not get FAA approval to use ODOT asphalt or concrete on that project. They've raised that now to 60,000 pounds. So that, and there's pros and cons to that. I'm not saying that that's something we would necessarily recommend for every project, but that is a mechanism that we can use to get what's called a modification of standards and get FAA's approval to use an ODOT specification versus an FAA one. And sometimes that's all that it takes. You may have a local concrete batch plant that says, if it's an FAA spec, I'm not touching it. I don't know anything about it, but I've heard from my friends it's really bad. And we have that happen. They just say, we don't want anything to do with FAA. But if you come and say, well, hey, yeah, this is on an airport, but we're going to use ODOT spec. You just did it on the highway. Oh, we can do that. So there's things that we do to try to look at ways to engage more contractors, engage more suppliers, and ultimately reduce the price of the job. And it is more difficult when you're remote. I mean, we definitely paid more for that concrete in Hooker than we paid for the same type of concrete in Enid. I mean, there is an escalation factor there, but they had done a project before where they got no bidders. So everybody said, no, we don't want any part of it. So.
And we have done those modifications of standards in the past, just recently on our ramp down here.
Yeah.
So if you were to be approved tonight, what do you start doing in the next 30, 60, 90 days? Do you review the CIP, the AIP? I mean, what do you start doing?
So, Joe and I talked about that a little bit. It's our understanding from your current CIP that Garber has designed, is it correct, am I correct, in that it's both phase 1 and phase 2 of the apron expansion? Did they have a contract to design both phases now?
I believe they have designed both phases.
Okay, so based on the current CIP, it's showing not doing a project in fiscal year 19 that we're in now, and doing construction on the first phase of that apron expansion in fiscal year 20. So if that's the case, and if that's what everybody wants to continue to do, there's really not a whole lot that we would immediately start doing. Obviously, we've got to make a transition somehow, but in between us and them, and I mean, they have designed that project, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel on anything that they've already done and you've already paid for. One idea that I presented to Joe Don, and it's just an idea. Now that there's a multi-year AIP funding bill, we have a project funding mechanism that we have not had for many, many years when the FAA was operating under a continuing resolution, where Congress just funds a program 6 months at a time, and they basically say, well, what we did on the last AIP bill, we'll do that again, we'll approve it for another 6 months. Well, now we have a 5-year AIP bill, so the FAA can issue what's called a multi-year grant. And based on our review of the CIP, it looks like Garver is projecting that you will need a full 4 years of your non-primary entitlement money. That's $150,000 that you get each year. You'll need 4 years of that to do phase 1. And based on what they show on the CIP, you won't have that 4 years made up until 2020. What a multi-year grant would allow you to do, if you wanted to, is go ahead and bid phase 1 now in 2019, assuming it's all designed and ready to go. Bid that in 2019, only having 3 years of funding available. You would then submit the grant application to FAA asking for more money than you currently have available. And what they could do is they could issue that multi-year grant, and there would be a statement in the grant that says, well, we'll give you all the money you have available now, which is essentially 3 years is what it looks like. And then as soon as that 4th year of funding becomes available in fiscal year 2020, we'll immediately amend your grant to add that additional $150,000. Now, the thing that we have to have in place in order to do that is, let's say we start construction in early fall, late fall of 2019, only having essentially 3/4 of the FAA money that you need. If the project schedule is such that the contractor is going to complete the work before that 4th year of funding is available, the city has to have the ability to front the difference that they need, essentially that 4th year's money, to go ahead and pay the contractor. He gets done and he goes home. And then as soon as the FAA funds are available for fiscal year 20, they would amend your grant with that additional money, and the city could immediately draw a 90% reimbursement off of what they had fronted. Now, that's making a lot of assumptions there. I mean, the city has to be financially in a position to be able to do that, but that would be a way to expedite starting the construction of phase 1. A potential advantage to that is we can certainly take Garver's plans, we can become familiar with their plans. If we're going to wait and bid that project a year from now or a year and a half from now, it's a little bit tricky. They could go ahead and sign and seal those bid documents now, but there's some things that are in the bid documents, like the bid notice. There's some things that are going to not be able to be finalized right now, a year and a half before you're going to bid them. So you would either still need to at least coordinate a little bit with them a year and a half from now, or we would have to take some of those documents and we would have to sign and seal them in addition to them. And that gets a little bit trickier. So an advantage of going ahead and doing that multi-year grant now would be, while they still have someone that is intimately familiar with the project because they designed it, what I suggested to Joe Don is that we could both be involved in that bidding process, because the contractors are going to have questions about the plans. Nobody has a perfect set of plans every time. We don't have a perfect set of plans every time. So there'll be some question that comes up in the pre-bid meeting that they're probably going to have to issue an addendum to clarify, no, this is what we meant, or this dimension's wrong, we need to change it. It would be best if they had signed and sealed those original plans for that addendum to come from them. It's not to say that we couldn't do it, but it would. There's reasons why it would be good for that to come from them. So if you could go ahead and get them involved in the bid process this year, and then my suggestion was have them work it through the bid process and then make recommendation of contract award, and then that would end their services for the design part, and then we could pick up with the construction administration and construction inspection. That would be a pretty logical place to make a break. Now, and that was just an idea. If the multi-year grant thing is something that's feasible for you guys, you may say, no, the city budget absolutely will not allow that. That's off the table. And that's fine, if that happens to be the case. What I think we probably would need to be sure that we do get from Garver is the electronic files for the plans. Not just PDFs, but actual CAD files. Because there'll be something ultimately that we need to manipulate. There'll be a drawing that requires clarification, or something that we need to do as part of the bid process. And so we would need to have their AutoCAD files in order to do that. Now, obviously, if we change their work, then we're signing and sealing it. We can't change something that has their engineering seal on it, obviously. And so we can manage that either way. There's not a wrong way to do that, depending on what you guys decide. We could either look at, and the other thing is, I don't know if you've already made the statement to FAA that we are absolutely not doing a project in 2019. If we have made that statement, we'd want to get with the program manager fairly quickly and say, hey, well, we've got this idea that we want to put on the table, and have that conversation. If all the design's done, that means all the environmental has already been done, so I don't see any major issue with that. I think we're early enough in the year where even if you've made the statement, we're not going to do a project, I don't think they would have rolled your funds over yet, your banked funds. So I would assume that there's still time to address that with the FAA.
And I do not believe that we have made that statement to the FAA.
Okay. The capital improvement plan, shows doing the project in 20, so, that is probably what they have in their mind. But I don't think that we're to the point where you couldn't go to them and say, hey, what if we did this? Yeah. The other reason for having the electronic files is if they've already designed phase 2, looking at the capital improvement plan, we're not looking at doing construction on phase 2 for 5 years. Well, there's no way that they can sign and seal those bid documents now and then go bid them 5 years from now. It's just not possible. Well, at the same time, you certainly don't want to pay us to redesign phase 2 that you've already paid them to do if we have those CAD files. At this point in time on that phase 2, we would need to take their name off of it. If we're going to advertise it and sign it and seal it, we can't do that under their certificate of authorization, and we wouldn't do that. So I would envision phase 1, get them to advertise that, run the bid process. But then on phase 2, we would just take their design files. We would obviously review them if we're going to sign and seal them. But then we would put our name on them. We would sign and seal those phase 2 drawings in 4 years, 5 years. And I guess that's one thing I don't necessarily, we haven't seen the plan as far as what the apron expansion looks like. And so I guess maybe a question, and maybe something we could do in the next 30, 60, 90 days. I'm making the assumption that you guys are involved in the development of the 5-year CIP and that you're fully in agreement with it. So a question that I would maybe ask, depending on what the apron expansion looks like and what your needs are, is if we get phase 1 done, does phase 2 of the apron expansion remain the highest priority project on the airport? And I mean, that's a topic of conversation that, we obviously need your input. Or if you've expanded it at 50% or whatever phase 1 looks like, do you now have more parking for aircraft, and would it make sense to put phase 2 on hold and go address the pavement on the parallel taxiway or something like that? And that's something that we could potentially do, especially if you decide not to do the project in 2019. That would probably be the next meeting that we would suggest, is just, make sure that everything on the 5-year CIP is exactly what you want. And I mean, really, you're not talking about doing anything besides apron expansion for at least 6 years. And if it's a sizable project at all, next after the apron, you're probably talking 7 or 8 years. So I guess that would be my first question: is our parallel taxiway pavement, or even some of the joints on the concrete pavement that need to be addressed, is it in the kind of shape that we're okay not touching it for 8 years?
You're talking about ramp pavement or?
No, out on the parallel, the portion of the parallel taxiway that's concrete. I think there was a couple of pictures that I put in the proposal that we noticed that the sealant had separated on that. So
I think the last plan that we approved was the phase 1, phase 2, then the lighting. This is how we had.
and actually, I don't think the lighting is even on the 5 years.
And then the engineering on the ramp plan involved doing ducting and stuff for electrical work to get out to the lighting.
Okay.
So it was, and then we had applied for this
Supplemental.
Right.
Right.
because we had all this.
Try to get it all at once.
Try to get it all at once.
Sure.
And I have no idea, have we heard anything on that, Joe Don?
No, we haven't heard anything on that yet.
Do,
And so, those were those were kind of the priorities that we, of course, it kind of morphs depending on what disasters or
completely,
things,
yeah. no,
money falls in our hands and stuff like that.
We didn't have taxiway lights on the CIP at Guthrie, and then our taxiway lights went out and had some major failures, and all of a sudden we had new project priority number one. So, I mean, that is just, sometimes we do react.
Has there ever been any, well, you said it's been a continuing resolution, has there ever been any hiccups between, on the scenario you laid out, where the FAA would, for the final year, would amend the thing, has there ever been a hiccup in that process?
So there's actually two things that have to happen in order for there to be grant monies. There has to be an authorization bill and there has to be an appropriation bill. The authorization that we have now is for 5 years, but Congress still has to appropriate the money every fiscal year, and I mean, most federal programs are that way. The last time we had the ability for a multi-year funding bill was in the back half of 2012. It was a 3.5-year bill. The back half of 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. And in 2013, we had two different projects, one at Bartlesville, one at Prague, that had multi-year grants that both required monies from 13, 14, and 15. So in those cases, those cities actually fronted the money for 2 years, and in both cases there were no issues. Now the federal fiscal year obviously starts October 1. The full fiscal year's appropriations are typically not available to amend to the grant until February or March. Congress typically does not pass that appropriation for the full fiscal year on October 1. And so usually we're waiting until early spring in order to be able to get a full year's amendment to the grant. So what I would envision, if you went this route and the FAA is okay with it, I would suggest, number one, that we drag our feet a little bit on bidding the project, and we need to make sure FAA is okay with the schedule, but maybe bid it midsummer, contract it, and maybe don't start construction until the end of September. And honestly, sometimes at the speed at which FAA moves, that's a pretty normal pace anyway. And so depending on the duration of the project and when we actually physically start construction with the contractor, it may not be that much of a gap between when we get their final bill and the city has to, put in extra city money and when FAA could amend those grants. I'm not aware of, since 2002, I'm not aware of a single year where the funding, where each airport that was eligible for $150,000 a year did not get their money. Even back in 2009, I think was some of the first continuing resolutions, and we had some airports that they got half their money early. They applied for a design grant early on because there was some uncertainty on the program, and then FAA turned around and issued a second grant in the same fiscal year for construction. That's the only year we've seen it work like that. The FAA said, man, that doubled our paperwork, it doubled our workload, we don't want to do that anymore. We know Congress is going to fund the back half, so everybody just sit tight and turn in one grant application, we'll fund it all at once. In my time doing airports and since 2002, there's never been a hiccup in that. My predecessor did airport work since 1959, and he said he remembered 1 year where the FAA or Congress did not fund the program, and the next year they double funded it. They made it up. So there is, because Congress has to appropriate it, there is, in theory, an element of risk. Historically, it's never been an issue.
So to answer your question on the phase 1, phase 2 of the ramp, it's a lot of it is based on a safety issue, because we're getting busy enough that throughout the year with military traffic coming through. Last year, with the fires around, we had the plane, aircraft, basically, we had them all over the airport because we didn't have the ramp space. But putting little airplanes and the jet traffic we get out here together, we don't have places to put the big planes without incurring, risk to the small aircraft. And I think, was it 4? It's 6. I think we have ramp space for 6 jets, or heavy twins that we can put out there.
And I certainly didn't mean to presume that
No.
anything's wrong with the 5-year CIP.
No, I was just informing, educating as to where we're coming from on that, and so.
Greg had mentioned that when we came up, that when the firefighting aircraft were here, it was packed.
When they have 55-foot wingspans, that sucks up a lot of space. And when you have your Jet A pump here, or your Jet A pump over there, and you have a 100 little lead here, it's nice to be able to get the big planes over here out of the way.
Right.
where the little guys aren't having to worry about jet blasts and stuff like that. And to try to create a better traffic flow and better access to the taxiway than what we have now to some degree. And just roughly speaking, based on your experience with what you're seeing out there for doing some of the repair work, like on the taxiway or the ceiling on the runway, what kind of numbers are you talking about cost-wise?
Well, the first rule of engineering is never do public math.
Understand?
That's the second rule is, to that question, is somewhere between 1 bag and 10 bags of money. I had a city engineer need to teach me that. But that said, most of the time, let's say we're talking about a crack seal and a seal coat on the asphalt portion of the parallel taxiway. Just quick and dirty, based on similar projects, I would think probably under $200,000. Probably 1 year's worth of money plus a little extra. Now that's obviously the quantity of cracks. That's something we would come out and do, is we would quantify the linear footage of cracks and actually come up with an accurate estimate. One of the things that we can talk about is, we've got a piece of pavement out there that's significantly wider than our standard taxiway. At some point in time, I understand not why it wasn't narrowed at the time. I mean, it's a cost issue, but we probably have to look pretty long and hard at, do we actually want to seal the portion of the pavement that's outside of our standard 35-foot wide taxiway? We might even have trouble getting FAA to participate in that. So maybe we don't seal the entire thing, and that would be one way we can kind of control the cost. But most of the time, if it's just a standard, seal coat, crack seal, and remark, somewhere around the $200,000 mark would be just best shoot from the hip guess.
So roughly 1 year's a
Yeah,
lot.
plus a little extra, would be my guess.
Well, I was afraid you might say $500,000 or $1 million.
No, and I mean, I don't think we've got a whole lot of, we didn't, what we would do is we'd come out and we would actually walk the entire thing. I mean,
Right,
that's
well,
how.
I understand.
But just assuming we're talking about crack seal and seal coat, I think 200,000 is kind of the right place to be at.
Well,
We have a
that's
whole
what I
bunch
would
of
assume,
patching.
but I get surprised sometimes with
Sure.
some of the numbers, because it says aircraft or airplane.
I know.
know.
And there are some firms that their logo will drive your price up too. We try to be very fair and objective with contractors, because we don't have very many that bid airport projects. In western Oklahoma, kind of central and western, the Circle S Paving out of Clinton is about the only asphalt contractor that will come bid our stuff, or bid it reasonably. We'll get somebody that's twice the price. And so, we try to be fair to those guys and work with them and have a good a project that benefits both the city and the contractor, because we need them to come back next year. I don't think, unless we're talking about sub-base reconstruction and patching, I don't think we'd be talking about $500,000 if we're just talking about the parallel taxi. But we don't have a DVE program at Watauga, do we, for this year? Yeah, so we're doing a patching project. There's no seal coat in it. It's just patching and crack seal on Watauga, because in 3 years they're going to overlay or reconstruct their runway. And anytime our FAA grant exceeds $250,000, we have to have a disadvantaged business enterprise goal. And so that's kind of our metric of how big is the project. I know Watauga is under $250,000 for their 4,000 by 75-foot wide runway. So based on that, I would think we could do something very similar on your taxi.
Any more discussion?
I move we retain CEC as the Alva Airport consultant for the next 5 years.
Second.
A motion second, call the roll, please.
Parker,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Mossberg,
Yes.
Logsdon,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. We're
We're
going,
more than happy to hang around if there's anything else. If you'd like us to leave, either way, whatever.
whatever.
Whatever you
Open meeting, whatever you want to do.
Well, if you guys wanted to talk after the meeting, we certainly didn't want to run off, but whatever you guys would like.
Anything I've got, I'll catch up with you.
Okay.
I'll make some phone calls and catch up with you.
Okay.
We appreciate you coming out.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're very welcome. Glad to do it, and look forward to working with you guys. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for buying fuel.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, thanks for having good GPS approaches. We were a little nervous about the weather, and I said, oh, they've got LPV approach. No, let's go. Won't be a problem. So, well, you guys have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll be talking to you, Tony.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll go on on to the next item, 9, discussion and action to approve fuel system upgrades required by Oklahoma Corporation Commission by Holidale in the amount of $3,392.70.
Well, that's the current, I mean, we've talked about it for a couple of months now. And we went ahead and did it because time was of the essence. We didn't have time to wait. We'd received 2 30-day extensions already. We didn't expect that we were going to get another one before we started. So I went ahead and approved the expenditure prior to the board meeting. So this is having y'all acknowledge that expenditure.
Right, I think that was within the parameters that we set on the spending limit a couple of years ago. That anything mandatory to comply with rules and regulations for insurance or utilities, that was the assumption.
That wasn't what was written.
Okay.
We still could have had a special meeting though.
Huh?
But
We could have called a special meeting and approved it
anyway,
36 hours after the last meeting.
there's no way around this expenditure, so it's a mandatory.
Yeah, he gave
But
me,
anyway,
I'm on my third
Yeah.
one, so I mean, and he was lucky, I was lucky to
do
get that
do
one.
we need to change the amount? I mean.
Well, like I
what's it
said,
gonna
Terry,
cost?
I was
Yeah.
just giving you
That's
some
the-
some
yeah, that's the next
examples.
agenda item.
I mean, it's
Say
kind of
what?
like Paul
That's
was
an
saying.
agenda item,
anything
we'll
with
talk
their
about
one
it.
Yeah.
on it, So,
I just needed a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve this expenditure with Holidale.
Second.
A motion and second, call the roll.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Mossberg,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes,
Parker,
Yes.
Logston.
Yes. We'll go on to item number 10, discussion and action on annual purchasing limits for the Alva Airport Fund.
Well,
Is that annual?
huh?
Current.
It should be per occurrence, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, but the purchasing limits are set annually.
Yeah, the purchase limits are set
Okay.
annually, that is correct.
what's your recommendation?
Anything that's mandatory to comply with FAA, Corporation Commission,
Safety of flight?
safety of flight, insurance, utilities, we have to pay that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. When you're buying equipment or upgrading something that's not mandatory for the FAA or the Corporation Commission or whatever, then that's a different issue.
right. That's the way I feel. I feel it's
So-
maintenance versus outright purchases is the way I look at it.
I think
But-
that's what we had in mind when we
Well,
did it.
that's what I thought we had in mind, but apparently.
That's
It's
not.
not
That's not the way I understood it.
I mean,
Okay.
this is the motion that was passed at that time. It was, all expenditures above $1,000 per occurrence from the Alva Airport funds must be approved by the Alva Airport Commission, excluding standard operating costs for salaries, utilities, insurance, and necessary inventory of aviation fuel, period.
Evidently, we didn't make our position clear enough.
Yeah.
So we clarified this meeting.
Yeah, anything that's required by the FAA, FAA compliance, like I said before.
Do you disagree with that? What do you think?
I think it should be like the rest of the department heads and, what was it, $5,000?
Well, it was that way out.
I'd
had it
feel
out
more
here
comfortable
before.
with that because like I said, I can't get Lieber at Hoydale. I mean, Lieber takes care of their lights. Hoydale, double check, I tried double check, I couldn't get him. These kind of places, the cathodic guys, Dupree out at Hutchison, every time they come out, it's over $1,000.
But that's required, that's required.
Yeah, that's
You have to do
required.
it, so
Yeah,
that's-
I have
that's
to
Those
do
are the
it.
only places able to do that, right?
Well,
I mean, the only ones we've used.
the ones we've used, I mean, you can get, I went with Hoydale instead of double check. We've used double check in the past, but I
We
wasn't
couldn't
getting
we
anywhere
couldn't
with
get them to
double.
come out.
I can get them to come out, but anybody, no matter what their company name is, they're all gonna be in that ballpark figure. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is just the thousands of dollars to get stuff corrected,
I think,
mandatory stuff.
It's,
I don't
Those are
disagree
mandatory.
with you, Dale, but I think there's a lot of subjectivity in someone determining whether it's necessary or or not. I think people at this table are going to disagree on that from time to time.
Where this came from, if you'll
Where this
recall-
came from should have been a personnel issue and not a spending issue.
Well.
It was
we
a personnel, it was a
spent 6,000
performance
We
issue.
spent $6,000 for something we didn't need.
It was a performance
And the
issue.
gentleman brought it up on Thursday when we had a commission meeting coming on the following Monday. And we've got a useless piece of equipment.
You know,
And
I don't
through nobody's
disagree with
fault.
that.
Pardon me?
I don't disagree with that. That was a performance issue by personnel.
What do you want? What do you recommend?
I think
What
it
do you-
should be $5,000, just like
I'd
the rest
feel
of
more
the.
comfortable.
like the
I
rest of the
say
city.
that, and I'm still gonna,
But,
I don't care if it's
okay, so it comes in
2,500,
at
I'm still gonna
5,000.
tell you.
We're never gonna be able to put the amount that sooner or later will require something. Everybody's got a limit, right?
Everybody's got a limit.
But I mean, you can't make one rule that will fit every situation.
You make the
And
rule,
then you can have,
this board can make whatever rule it wants. What I think it needs to be is $5,000.
I think if we word it the way you're talking about, that's what I'd recommend. That's my opinion.
That piece of equipment that was bought, could be considered a capital expenditure, right?
Yes.
So if we just excluded capital expenditures and set it to $5,000 limit, that should solve the problem, shouldn't it? Because because the capital expenditure is already approved via the budget, right? Or it could come up before the board.
The capital expenditures are approved via the budget.
Unless
But if the capital expenditure is over the authorized spending limit that the board sets, it would need to come back before the board for approval.
or the other department, you're saying,
They're between $5,000 and $10,000, the other departments are. Is that correct?
That would be correct. Yeah, between 5
if we
and
said it, I'd
15,
feel more comfortable
with myself
five.
being higher than that. I'm at 24.
For
But there's-
the electrical issues, for.
There's nothing any issue that we've had that doesn't fall in the required mandatory, you have to do it.
Right.
It's not an optional. So it would be completely excluded from this discussion. You would already do it without any discussion
Right.
with the airport board because it has to be done.
Though, there would be limitations to that though. If it has to be done and it's gonna cost 25 grand,
Well, right.
I mean, it has to be done, but that needs to come to this body.
Right.
It has,
Yeah, and I understand that too.
You can't,
there's nothing that it's safety of flight thing, it's an automatic. It doesn't matter whether or we close the airport. That's our option. Either we do that or we quit the services. If it's a $25,000 deal, and if we don't do that $25,000 deal, the FAA is going to shut us down, there's no question. You do it, even if it's beyond the spending limit.
I don't know, and you guys might be able to tell me, but in the industries that I've worked in, you don't get shut down that day.
No,
Probably not.
probably not.
Well, just like airplanes, they can ground the whole fleet, safety of flight. Nobody has any argument with it, because it's done. So, if
I'm
it,
not arguing that, I'm just saying, I think we'd miss out on some efficiencies by not setting an annual spending limit. Because the annual spending limit, or the spending limit, is per occurrence. But when we say that our airport manager, we've hired him, we put him in the position, his job description is clearly defined, he spends time with this body and knows generally what our expectations are, what's an appropriate purchase and what's an inappropriate purchase. If he operates outside of that,
Then that's me.
that's him.
Yeah.
That's me.
That's
Yeah,
not,
I have no, I trust Greg totally.
yeah.
but he might
I
Like
give him
not,
I
my check
said,
if
it
he wants
doesn't
it.
matter if you set a $5,000 spending limit, and it only costs $3,500, I'm still gonna inform you and him.
For
and the
everything
board.
that you brought up in your report, $5,000 would have covered it.
Yeah.
And that's the lowest level. I mean, it was 1,000.
Right.
It was 1,000. That's the lowest level that's consistent with what the rest of the city departments are doing.
I feel, I'm just expressing this to the board, if that's the way the other city departments are, I feel comfortable with that. Because that will get the things corrected that I need to get corrected with, you know, without having to call a special meeting or, you know, and like I said, it doesn't matter, I'm still gonna tell them.
And there are emergency clauses in place for municipalities. The airport would be included that if it is an emergency, the amount is an after-the-fact thing anyway. You fix it,
Right.
Just like this deal right here.
with or without this purchasing limit in place. There's certain criteria that have to be met for a true emergency. I don't mean to be.
Would those have to be clearly defined from the airport as being an emergency?
No, those are clearly defined by statute. Yeah, state statute clearly defines the conditions for an emergency. In an emergency, for us, if we're out of compliance with a regulation, that's not going to be an emergency in the eyes of the state.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't ever have an emergency unless we had an airplane crash on the runway.
Right.
And then we'd have to expense some,
You do whatever it takes in
Yeah,
those
to get the
situations.
airplane
and
off.
You get it taken, you respond.
and then that would be charged back to the airplane owner, because it's the owner is responsible to remove his crashed airplane.
My only, and my position on this hasn't changed. It's just simply that it would be consistent with the rest of the city if it was a spending limit between $5,000 and $15,000. I think 5 is the lowest end of that, coming up from 1,000. And from what Greg just shared, it covers everything he talked about plus a little bit.
Plus it keeps the OCC guys off of my back. No offense. I mean, he's been real nice, he's worked with me, but there's just certain things, like I said, you know, that.
Well, and see, the other brake mechanism is that we've approved a budget, and so we can't spend beyond what the budget
Correct.
has allowed.
Without a budget amendment
So,
from this board and city
so
council.
that's your other brake mechanism in that.
I understand why it went to the $1,000 level in 2017. I do understand why. But I feel like with the appropriate personnel in place, it is appropriate to then have the spending limits consistent with the rest of the city.
As long as we've got a manager like we have now.
And I will say this, it's an annual approval even at the city.
It is an annual approval even at the
That's
city.
annual?
It's an annual approval even at the city, yes.
Yeah. Well, as long as we have a manager like we have now, instead of, you know, but he might not, the annual makes me feel better because, he won't be here forever, and we never know until a person has.
Yeah.
Are you trying to get rid of me?
No, but I figure.
No,
there's no action or
when
motion
you're
any longer.
102, you'll probably retire.
I hope it's not that long.
I make a motion that we raise the limit to $5,000.
I'll second it.
Motion second, call the roll, please.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Mossberg,
Yes.
Logsdon,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
We'll go on to the next item, 11, discussion and action on employment of a part-time attendant.
Have you had any applicants,
We've had one,
the one that he's talking about?
yes. And I talk with him tomorrow at 1:30.
Fantastic. I'd like to make a few suggestions, throw them out if you want, whatever. I think we need to raise the salary. I don't think $10 an hour is appropriate.
You think what?
I don't think $10 an hour is enough for a weekend help.
Our starting is 1074.
I think, well, what I would like to see, this is just suggestion, trying to help. If we, now I've been told that Woodward's part-time man gets $12.50 and after a year it's 13. I would recommend that we start them at 11 and then they have a trial period and raise them to 12.
Okay, well, let's back up here. We contacted Woodward. Woodward does not have any part-time employees,
They don't,
none.
or somebody like it.
And then, their full-time starts out at $11 an hour.
You were there when I was told.
Yeah,
what
I
was told.
heard the conversation, but maybe somebody was pulling
So
out away.
somebody
Yeah.
gave me some baloney.
Yeah, that is not correct. That we called today and verified that. Perry Airport is between $8 and $9 an hour. We looked at, within our community, we've got Atwoods that starts people out at $8.50. VAP starts people out at $8.50. Walmart told us they started people out at 11, but I know that when my wife worked there, for full-time employment, she wasn't making that. So I don't know that that's what we were told by Walmart, so. But those are, and Northwestern pays, minimum wage.
Well, here's my thoughts.
Plain plastic starts out at 11,
So
and we're talking about
1074
going to
is
12.
Here's my thoughts on it. If you would say raise it, let's say $2 an hour, that'd be $16 a day increase. Saturday and Sunday, that'd be a total of $32. And we're not getting applicants. We're very fortunate to have one. I mean, I'm really concerned. I mean, I
am too. I don't have any applicants for, I've got probably 6 jobs open at the city right now and don't have any applicants yet.
Well, I'm thinking that if we raise the salary, that we might get some more applicants, because one jet in here on a weekend would kill the $32 just
Okay,
like that.
and here's this. We don't advertise what a starting wage is. We advertise what our salary, we don't, the individual wage that is paid to a person is based on that person's experience and that person's qualifications. Our range for a part-time employee at the airport is between $10.74 and $13.60.
Oh, do we have a leeway?
Yeah, we have a leeway. We've always had a leeway.
Well, I didn't realize that. But anyway, and then I think that the airport manager, this is a suggestion, take it off of you. Let him take care of the advertising, take it out of the airport fund. Let him.
Well, it comes out of the airport fund anyway, but
Let him write it up and,
well, a lot of times it's just more efficient because, like I say, we've got 5 to 6 applicants right now, or job openings right now, and it's more cost effective to run all of them at one time and direct them to the website for individual, to find out individually about the job, than it is to run 6 different job applications, or job advertisements.
well, what we're doing is not working, so I think we need to take a look at doing something different. I mean, it's just a suggestion.
Well, we're at a 2.6 unemployment rate.
Well,
The percentage of unemployment rate is 2.6 for Woods County.
I understand.
And we're trying to get employees, basically, what we're trying to do is steal employees from VAP.
I'm not criticizing you, I'm trying to help you.
I understand that, and I'm just saying that I think that we've got the most efficient manner in place to advertise for jobs and get somebody, and spend the least amount of money while doing that.
Pretty well everybody in Woods County that has a job, or that wants a job, has a job.
That's right.
The other way, anybody that's employable.
Anybody, yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's some, there's a large percentage of that 2.4% who don't want a job.
Yeah, that is correct.
And
I've got a job posted right now, $35 an hour, 10 hours a week, that I haven't had but one applicant for in the last 5 weeks.
Well, then, if we don't keep the airport covered, and you can't run him 24/7, we know that. If we don't do something, if we don't get somebody, then we can have a 5-day-a-week airport, and we'll be in the same, and we might as well get rid of the Jet A truck, and we'll just be another Cherokee Winoka.
Well, maybe the
And all
guy,
go to Woodward.
You think this
maybe the guy tomorrow will,
I was
Greg has
impressed.
talked to this applicant, and Greg is very enthusiastic about him. I don't have any reason to believe that he won't be a good applicant and very employable.
there's
Younger kid.
lots of businesses here that
Just
have
got
trouble
here.
finding employees, Terry.
Yeah, he goes to
Okay.
school.
There's not
Every
everybody-
business in town.
There's no
I
like
mean,
a
it
lot.
doesn't make me any money either way.
Well, I understand it, I just think
I
that
think he's
the
very
way we're
easy
doing
to
it
train.
is
He's
probably
got
the most cost-effective way to do
equipment
it.
experience, I told him the number one thing out here is being safe.
Yeah,
I
Don't
didn't write
put
that.
the wrong fuel
I've
on
seen
their
it.
plane.
I got a copy of it, yeah.
Oh, good, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Seems like he's got
Yeah.
common sense.
Okay.
You know.
I think
Okay.
if you,
well, if the guy works out good tomorrow, we'll just probably be solved for a while.
Well, for a little while, I think that and I've talked to Greg about this, I think for us to operate the way we want to operate out here, we've got to have at least 2 part-time employees.
that's what I think.
And, this will give Greg a little breathing room, but it doesn't mean we quit looking. We've still got to find that next right person.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that,
if they're a college kid that only lasts 3 or 4 years, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because college kids, some of them want to work.
I hired a part-time police officer today.
We'll talk.
Okay.
It's probably only gonna last 4 years before he goes somewhere else. It's a college kid,
That's the best ones to get.
Okay.
you know, so.
We beat item 11 up pretty good. We don't have any action at this time, so we'll go on to item 12. Remarks and inquiries by airport boards members.
Turf runway. Turf runway. Do we have a plan?
This,
Yeah,
this,
I've talked to various people about that. I think our best option is if we can find a good, heavy, pull-behind roller, and they're out there once in a while, like on Purple Wave or something like that. I hear that you just have to roll it and roll it and roll it and roll it. The
it's a
only
drag
other,
harrow. I've got a drag harrow that's gonna drag over it.
I talked to Brandon about that.
Well, I have too.
And he said, man, that would end up being a big old mess, but
Oh, that's not what he told me.
a spike arrow?
No, drag harrow,
Oh,
not a spike. No, a spike.
spike arrow, he said, wound up being a big mess.
Yeah.
But he did say that he's thinking, he wants a roller for himself.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, Bruce brought up the idea of re-sprigging it, but I don't think we need to, because I think we're getting grass established. It's just trying to get the ridges
Well,
down on it.
We re-sprig it and we put the
Ridges
ridges right back in it.
But if we had a
Yeah.
roller, and I don't know, maybe that's something we can borrow from, I haven't investigated. Maybe the county's got one we can borrow.
The city had a big roller. It was about 5 foot diameter,
We don't have a
The
pull
pull
behind
behind.
roller.
Okay, it must have went away, but the airport used it years and years ago. But-
Because the thing about having one on hand is they said even though, let's say that, let's pretend that was full of luscious Bermuda out there. I've heard that you wanna go out there even after the grass is established and everything and you're keeping it mowed, that you wanna go out there 2 or 3 or 4 times a summer and roll it for the fact of the moles and the gophers and stuff like that, or, I mean, you're gonna try to keep them
So it
out.
wouldn't be something that we just need for a
No,
little
no,
bit.
we could
If
use
it
one,
continually.
you know, and
So that's-
some of them I've seen on Purple Wave are as low as $1,500, you know, $2,000.
Get that operational, I mean, after all the time,
And
you know, we
I'm
haven't
from
spent a lot of
Kiowa,
money
and
on it.
Kiowa's got one setting next to their city building down there, and I was gonna see if I could talk to one of the city guys, if they don't use it, maybe they'd be willing to let
The
it go.
county guys.
The city in Kiowa.
Oh, in
The
Kiowa.
town of
Okay, I'm
Kiowa.
sorry.
There's
I
a
didn't
big
hear you. I didn't
roller
hear
sitting
you.
there on the west side of their building, a pull behind, and
Well, we don't like for a tractor to pull it, so.
no.
It's that time of year, we need to.
Yeah, but
Now, that might be one thing, I mean, if you got the mower hooked up and you needed to roll, you might have to see if we could run over here and lease a tractor for an
Are
hour
we
or two.
gonna take any action
do
on
it,
that, or
but-
put it on the agenda next time, or do we wanna do that?
I don't think it'd be a
I
waste,
wanna
a
get, I wanna.
wasted
what I'd
piece
like
of
to do,
equipment
it
if
may
we
not
had
be on
one.
the
is
next
what I'm
agenda.
saying.
It might not, it won't be on the
But a
agenda,
tractor,
but it'll
well,
probably be
there's
on the,
nothing
on
edgy.
the, maybe on the
that's why I
next.
smoothed it up.
I wanna try to
Before we
get
sprayed it. It was smooth.
everything
before we sprayed
that,
it. I used
um,
my driving on it.
I need from Garver in my hands right now before I start moving forward with him, so got
We're
kind
getting
of
some
a
good
transition
grass on the
plan
west side.
Yeah.
to get from where we're at to where we're going.
I'd like to see us do that, if it's feasible.
Yeah, and I mean, if at all possible, yeah, we
So
will
you
be
can
able
get
to
us some
do it.
options, come back next meeting,
Mhm.
get us some options, or you just,
I'm, like I said, I'm, you know, talking to Brandon, talking to different people, I mean,
If you think the roller's the way to go, see if you
Well, I
locate a
think-
roller,
I
they
don't
want to
think
bring
a
back some
roller-
prices or something.
yeah. I don't think a roller would be a piece of wasted equipment.
Depending on what the,
If you could
depending
get
on
one
the
for
amount,
a
but
couple
yeah,
$1,000,
yeah, I mean, I think, I think that
we
it's,
could
I
store
think
it
it's a
right next to
doable
the round
proposition right
top,
now.
Okay.
It's just,
Might have to go lease a tractor.
I think we
to-
need
My
to
drive
get-
barrel with it this weekend,
we gotta get our
after the
deliverables
rain.
in hand.
It'll be nice and soft.
I
And
just
that's what
wondered
we
if
should.
we
And
can.
adjust
Yeah,
it
I'll
to
try to
quote.
get some options, maybe I can talk, maybe the county's got a great big one that I could use for a while.
And I mean, we are right in the middle of budget session, so if Greg found or could get good prices on what a roller would cost, a good used roller, then even if we don't have, even if there's not one out there now that we can go buy, let's say Kiowa doesn't want to try to sell theirs, and we would at least have it in our budget next year, that if we found it, we could go ahead and take action pretty quickly to get that purchased.
Go down and get one of those culverts and run it around.
Well, there you go, yeah.
Maybe some pipe.
that would do it.
Yeah.
Just got the tractor, just push it.
Just push it.
Put a big pipe in the chain, pipe and chain, drag it around.
Yeah. Any other remarks or inquiries by the airport board members? Not? Remarks and inquiries by citizens? Nope. We'll adjourn this meeting then.